Okay, we started talking in section 13.1 about loans a little bit. This whole section is about consumer credit. So consumer credit refers to the borrowing of money to finance purchases of things like cars, furniture, appliances, jewelry, electronics, etc. Technically, real estate mortgages are also considered consumer credit, but they usually involve much larger amounts of money over longer repayment periods, and we'll look at them specifically in another section. Okay, so we're looking at things that are not real estate loans. And an installment loan is the kind of loan, actually, so consumer credit, let me make mention too. Consumer credit would involve your credit cards as well. But credit cards are typically not thought of as an installment loan. Installment loans tend to be something where you take out the purchase price and you pay it back over a specific amount of time. And credit cards are considered a revolving credit. So while it's consumer credit, it's not an installment loan. If you stopped the card and then paid it off, it would become an installment loan if you're doing it that way. But installment loans typically involve borrowing a set amount of money up front, paying a series of equal installments or payments until the loan is paid off. Your school bills at some point will probably be done as an installment loan. If you've ever taken out a car loan, it's an installment loan. If you go and you buy your fiance that ring that you're looking at in the store and you finance it, it's an installment loan. Okay? If you go buy, we're going to talk about Ann and Andy in a moment, they're going to buy a refrigerator. Appliances are often done, if you do them as a credit, they're often done as an installment loan. All right, Ann and Andy. I hope you've printed these out because some of these questions are really long. Ann and Andy's refrigerator dies unexpectedly. This happened to us about a year ago. It was winter, so our refrigerator it just became the garage for a little while. It was cold enough it worked until we could get a new one. They're in the midst of paying off debt, so they do not have the cash to buy a new refrigerator. Against their better judgment, it would be against their better judgment, by the way, they decide to finance a new refrigerator. Stores like to do this. They offer 6 months interest-free financing as long as Ann and Andy pay the fridge off in the first 6 months. Have you seen interest like that described before? It's a trap. Just be careful with it, okay? It's a trap. Because what happens if they don't pay it off in those 6 months is then interest charges. But interest doesn't just start charging, it goes back to the beginning of the loan. That's how the interest works on a loan like that. So we're going to look at what happens with Ann and Andy. The store requires a $200 down payment, and the refrigerator they're choosing is a $2,000 refrigerator. And we're going to do tax included because I don't want to mess with the numbers being all funky. The numbers don't work like that nicely in real life, but we're just going to pretend for the moment. Sound good? Okay. So the first thing we're going to figure out is how much they're financing. Okay, so there's a lot of questions throughout this whole chapter where they're going to set things up like this, and it's always found the same way. So the amount that you're financing is always found. So the amount, I'll write it sort of as a formula. The amount financed is the price, in this case of the refrigerator, minus the down payment. And it doesn't matter if it's a refrigerator, if it's a car, if it's a house. This is how they figure out your amount financed, right? It's how much you're borrowing the money for. So how much is their refrigerator? It's $2,000. How much is their down payment? $200. So how much are they financing? $1,800. Okay, simple enough? Okay. The next thing says then, how much do they need to pay each month in order to avoid the finance charge? So how long did it say that they had to do this before they could to avoid the finance charge? They had 6 months to do this for, right? So they're going to take that $1,800 that they financed, right? Not the $2,000 because they already paid $200 of it. It's just the financed amount. And they're going to divide by the number of months that they need to pay this off in. 1,800 divided by 6 would give you $300 a month. Okay, makes sense? They clearly think this is doable, right? As does everyone who starts into that process. So as I mentioned before, if Ann and Andy don't pay the fridge off in the 6 months, the store will backdate the interest to the beginning of the loan. They have 12% add-on interest. So we'll talk about add-on interest is here in just a second. At which point Ann and Andy will be put on a payment plan, and they have to pay it off over the next 2 years. Add-on interest. Add-on interest is not like what happens when you pay off a loan early. If it's add-on interest, it means that they're going to simply add the amount of the interest onto the loan, and you just have to pay it no matter how fast you pay it off. So if they pay this off in 6 months and 1 day, they still have to pay the same 12% as if they had paid it off in the full 2 years. Does that make sense? So what do you do for add-on interest? Well, add-on interest is like simple interest, actually. It follows the same type of a formula. So what we do is we figure out first how much the interest will be, and that's the first question. Part C, how much interest will be added on after 6 months? Again, no matter how much they've already paid, it's backdated to the beginning of the $1,800 loan if they fail to make the payments toward the loan. And so we take our $1,800. Oh, let me write it down since we don't have it in the screen. We had A equal PRT. That's the simple interest formula. The P was the 1,800. The R, the interest rate, is the 12%. So as a decimal, that's 0.12. What's the time? Not 2 years. 6 months. So 0.5. Right, so it's the 6 months. There it is, right here. So 6 months is 0.5 years. Okay, so this is our first encounter where we need to change it into a number of years. It's 0.5 years. So if we take our 1,800 times 0.12 times 0.5, how much is that going to be? 108. So it's $108 now for the interest.
That's just for 6 months?
Hmm?
And that's just for that 6 month period?
That's just the interest accrued over the 6 month period. Yes. Okay. Are we good so far? Okay, we're going to move on to the next piece then. So that 108 automatically gets added on no matter how quickly they pay it off after the 6 month time period at that point, because they didn't pay it off in full by 6 months. So on this part B, or D, excuse me, what is the new total amount to be repaid? Well, if they haven't made any payments, that's actually what part C said at the very end. I just sort of glossed over it because I didn't need it right then. But they didn't make any payments, right? Something happened, life happened, something else probably broke down in the middle of this process, and so they didn't pay anything. So they have the same 1,800 that they previously had. So our new principal is the 1,800 that they had from before. I don't know why I put a parenthesis at the beginning there. Plus my new 108. Okay, the add-on interest for the 6 months. So what's that total? That's 1,908. But now they're on a compound interest payment plan. This is where your 2-year part comes into play. Well, compound interest is A equal P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. So your principal is now the 1,908, right? The rate is still, oh, I'm sorry, it's I didn't write this down right. I'm sorry. Take a step back, mark things out. I'm sorry. Let me write it this way. It's the simple interest. I meant to put not the compound interest. I'm sorry. Simple interest, add-on interest, all the same, simple. So it's a 1,908. I have the 1 plus. The interest rate that we mentioned was the 12%, so it's 0.12. But this is where the time of 2 years comes into play. Okay? So the T here is now 2 for my 2-year period. So now I am set up on a payment plan. The payment plan pays it out over the 12 months. I have 1,908 as my starting value because it didn't make any payments during the first 6 months. And if we take this and we multiply, add, and so forth, what is our actual amount that we now are going to pay for the refrigerator after the $200 down payment? Okay? So this is the amount that gets actually financed at this point, right? That I'm going to have to pay out considering the amount that I borrowed and the amount of the interest. I'm creating a monthly payment plan, right? How many months am I going to pay this out in? 24. So on Part E, when I find my monthly payment amount, I take that amount that I had from Part D, the $2,365.92, and I divvy it up between 24 months. What do you get? 98.58. And Ann and Andy breathe a sigh of relief. They're not paying $300 a month. Now they're paying $100 a month for a really long time, for 2 years, right? But do you not think that way sometimes too? Because I know I do sometimes. I look at that and think,
We're thinking short term.
we think short term, and so are Ann and Andy. So we're going to take a look at the total cost of the refrigerator. I mean, they went and they looked, and the sticker price plus tax was $2,000, right? It's not what they're going to pay for this refrigerator, though, correct? It's not. So our last part of this problem, right, find the total cost of the refrigerator plus interest. Well, the refrigerator that they financed amount, right, this is the Part D right here, the $2365.92, is what they're going to pay over that 24 months, $2365.92. And then we're going to add back in $200. Why am I adding in $200? Right, that's what they paid as their down payment. Right, they already paid that amount. So this is $2,565.92. And I don't want to go into super amount of detail. It's not because it's complicated, but just because it's not going to show up in your questions. But what this actually is it's 28% more than the sticker price. When you consider $2,565 compared to the $2,000 if they had just paid for the thing, that's 28% that they're paying for the luxury of paying this out over the 2.5-year time frame, because remember they had that 6 months up front that they didn't pay anything in. It's a big increase. It's a big increase. All right. So let's talk about the other type of consumer credit that I mentioned before, which is revolving loans. So this is credit card stuff. It's also called open-end credit, whereas the installment loans were closed-end credit. So revolving loans are no fixed number of payments. You just continue to pay things off until you don't owe anything else anymore. So if you want to kind of put in quotes, this is credit cards. That's what you're looking at here, is a credit card type of a situation. And itemized billing is the statement that comes from a credit card at the end of every month, where it tells all the things you've purchased. It tells other things too, like if you've had any cash advances, where you go to the Walmart and say, yeah, I'd like $20 cash back. It's a cash advance. It tells you the total balance that you owe on that kind of a statement, the itemized billing. It tells you a minimum balance, a minimum payment that's required at that given point. It's usually pretty small compared to the amount of the actual bill, especially if the bill is significant. It also tends to have like the interest rate somewhere within the document that you're looking at. For a credit card interest rate, they're usually really, really high. So they tend to be close to 20%. Now that's not as bad as the 28% on our consumer credit purchase of the refrigerator just a moment ago. But it's pretty high, especially when you consider that you can only put your money in the bank and get like 0.2% interest rate or something like that, right? It's pretty high. A couple of different things that we take a look at in this as well is finance charges. We'll flip to the screen in a moment. And then we're going to talk about the average daily method for calculating your interest and your repayment. Okay, finance charges. Finance charges may include a lot of things. They aren't just interest, though it includes that. They can include the interest. Sometimes, depending on the kind of a card you're looking at, there's an annual fee. There also can be credit insurance coverage, depending on the policy you have or the type of card you have. A time payment differential or carrying charges. These are all things that can be included, don't have to be, but can be included in a finance charge. And the average daily balance method is how it figures out how much interest you owe. So when you think about borrowing money for like a car, it's obvious how much money you owe, right? You borrowed the money for the car. It's just this specific amount. The problem with credit cards is that you charge and you pay things off at different points during the month, right? There's a give and a take that's constantly going on. So how do they figure out how your payment charge is working, right? Your finance charge is working. It's the average daily balance method. So they consider the amount that you have borrowed and for how long of the month you have it borrowed, right? So if you go and you purchase, your Christmas gifts at the beginning of December, or if you're a last minute shopper and you wait till December 20th, and then you get the bill, at the end of the month or whatever, if you've charged everything at the beginning of the month, it's different than if you charged it to the middle or the end of the month, because you've borrowed it for a longer period of time or a shorter period of time. So this takes into consideration the amount of time over which you've actually owed the company that much money. So we're going to do an example. This type of an example feels really messy because there's a lot of steps, okay? The steps aren't hard. There's just a lot of them. So we're going to take a look. It says for the following credit card account, assume 1 month between billing dates with appropriate number of days. The interest rate is 1.3% per month. I'd like to make mention of the fact that this feels like it's small. The reason is it's a monthly charge. So if you take 1.3 and multiply by 12, that's your annual rate, the R that we use normally, right, for like other kind of rates. So don't be misled in thinking, oh, it's a really low interest rate card. It's not. It's the monthly rate, okay? And then it says on the average daily balance, we're going to find A, the average daily balance, B, the monthly finance charge, and C, the account balance for the next billing. Okay, so we're finding a bunch of different pieces. And I think the easiest way to do this is to set up a chart that has it all in there so you can see how the pieces relate to one another. So here are the details that we're going to put in the chart. The previous balance, right, the amount that you didn't pay off last month, is $728.36. And on May 9th, that's when you get that bill for that amount, okay? You make a payment on May 17th of $200. Then you go out to dinner on May 30th, $46.11. And then on June 3rd, you buy some theater tickets for $64.50. Okay, so these are the different things that are happening. Everybody good so far? You have a picture of what's happening in your mind. Okay. So we're going to set up a chart with those details in it. And I purposely don't have any of my charts set up because I want you to see that yours won't usually be set up either, and you're going to have to start from scratch, just like I'm going to show you how I start from scratch. So start by making a, it's kind of like a spreadsheet, right? So you're going to make a grid. And on your grid, you're going to have our, let's see, I have 4 columns in my grid. The first one has got the most writing in it, so you might allow yourself a little bit bigger of a, I can't get it to work now. All right. Forget it. It's just going to be what it is. All right. Here and here. There's my 4. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start out with the previous balance on the top. And the previous balance is the 728.36. I'm going to have my next column header is going to say my running balance. So I sincerely hope you keep some kind of a checkbook register. This is what the checkbook register would look like if you threw your checkbook, right? How much you really still have in the account so you don't go over withdrawing your account, right? Overdrawing your account. The running balance. The next piece is going to have a days. This is the number of days. Whoops. Number of days till the balance changes. And this last column is the balance times the days. I'm going to slide this up. Balance times the number of days. Okay. So the first thing that happens is that the bill comes. So on May 9th, the bill comes. And the balance from the bill is the $728.36. Correct? That's what happens first. The next thing that happens on May 17th, we'll get the other columns in a moment, but on May 17th, we have a payment. We pay $200. So the running balance goes down, right? Now I only owe, with the running balance, $528.36. And then on May 30th, I go to eat. It's dinner. And I charge $46.11. So I'm charging $46.11. So what's going to happen to the $528? It's going to go up. It's going to increase, right? Because I'm charging that amount at the restaurant. So my $528.36, I add the $46.11 to it, and I have $574.47. And then on June 3rd, I get the theater tickets, and those tickets are $64.50. And what again is going to happen to my balance? It's going to go up. So the $574 goes up to $638.97. Okay, the next column, the number of days. We're going to fill this all in at one time. The number of days column takes into consideration how long our balance sits at the $728. Okay, well, the bill comes in the mail, $728, but I just hang on to the bill and I don't pay it for how many days? 8 days. So this 8 is coming from how long it is until it changes to the $528. It went from May 9th to May 17th. 17 minus 9, that's 8 days. And then I pay the $200, and then from May 17th to May 30th, it sits at the $528. For how many days? 13 days. And then from May 30th to June 3rd, this is where it's the appropriate number of days. You need to know how many days are in the month of May. How many are there? 31, right? So with 31 days in the month of May, how long do we sit at the at the 574.47? 4. Let me shift those up just a little bit because I'm out of space. That's 4 days. And you might be saying, well, how do I find out the next one? Well, the description and the way that it really does work is that the bills come out the same day every month, whatever that day is. So if the bill came out on May 9th, it's going to come out again on June 9th. So it's not written here, but on June 9th, I'm going to get another bill. That says June. There's going to be a new bill. So how long am I going to sit at the $638.97? 6 days. Everybody good? And then our last column is simply multiplication. We're just going to multiply the running balance times the number of days. Running balance times number of days, straight across. So in each one of those cases, I'm just going to write them in because we're running a little short on time. But we've got 58, 26, 88. I've got 68, 68, 68. 68's right. I have 22, 97, 88. And then I have 38, 33, 82. Okay, does that make sense? I'm just multiplying the number of days times the amount. And then we're going to add that up. And if you add that up, you will get the same thing I do, which is $18,827.26. 26. Now, that's not how much money we owe. That's not what we just found. We found the total amount every day. So it's like we went in every day and it says, oh, you owe this much, and I wrote that number down. Oh, you owe this much, and I wrote that number down. And I added up how much I owed every single day of the month together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by the number of days in the month. So my average daily balance takes that 18,827.26, and it divides by, in this case, 31. So the 31 is the number of days, in this case, in May, because I passed through May 31st. If I divide that out, that gives me the average amount that my balance was at any given point in the month, right? Add the amount of all the different days of the month and divide. This is 607.33. That 607.33 is then how we determine our interest rate. The average amount that I owed on any given day. So the finance charge down here is 1.3% of the average daily amount. Well, what is 1.3% as a decimal? 0.013. The average daily amount is the 607.33. And in this one, it's giving you $7.90. Okay? I know you guys can put all these in your calculator, so we're going to just zoom right past it for the moment. $7.90. And so what will happen then at the end of the month on June 9th when you receive your new bill is that your new bill will include the $7.90 and the final amount that you had of the $638.97. $638.97 was your ending balance, right? That's where you were. You were at $638.97 as your total at the end of the month that you owed. But then they add the finance charge on. That's the $7.90. So $638.97 and the $7.90 means your new balance that you will get on June 9th in the mail when it closes, or in your email probably, right? Really. It'd be $646.87. It's not the average amount, right? The average amount is what's used to determine the finance charge, but the average amount's not what you owe. It's the balance after those theater tickets plus the finance charge that you will now owe come June 9th.